Hello guys, in this lecture we will be discussing about the different parts of a scientific article or an article which is being written for a dental journal. We will also discuss about various types of articles and the typical IMRAD type of article which is being written in most of the dental journals. Well, the questions they come in the board exams asking us about different sections of the article, like where you will find the methodology, where you will find the results of some research which is being discussed in this article, etc., etc. So this lecture will enable you for that, as well as, of course, when we try to get the admission in North American dental schools, then they ask you that how many articles you have written, and meanwhile, when you are waiting for the admission after your board exams or during you are preparing for your board exam, you try to write certain articles for the dental journals. So this will also give you a guideline how to write the write an article or like a scientific paper for the dental journal. So what are the parts you have to look into and how you have to proceed for it, etc., etc. So let's start now. Well, without publication, science is dead. Like whatever the research you do, if you don't publicize it, if there are no publications on it, then who is going to know that what you have done, what was your research, what were your results, what type of methodologies you adopted, etc., etc. Different types of articles are being written in the dental journal. So let's discuss firstly the different types of articles. The general IMRAD scheme. I will explain to you what this IMRAD means. Then other types of articles are also being published. And then the research poster. Research posters are actually exhibited during some conferences or during some scientific sessions. I will explain those to you as well. So firstly, the general IMRAD scheme. I is from introduction, M is from the methods, R is from the results, and then D is from the discussion. So actually the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors in 1978, they have recommended this scheme for writing the scientific articles. So in the general IMRAD scheme, there is an abstract, which is a 1 to 4 paragraph summary of the paper. Then there is an introduction which describes the background for the research. Then there are materials and methods which provide specific details, then the results. This section describes the outcome, and finally, then there will be a discussion which describes the implications of the research, and finally there is conclusion. It places the research in context and describes avenues for the further exploration. Other types of articles, these are research papers, letters. These are not the letters to the editors. They are different letters which I am going to explain to you. Then the supplemental articles, miniature articles, review articles, and the research notes. Firstly, we will discuss the letters, which we also call communications, and as I told you, they must not be confused with the letters to the editor. These are short descriptions of important current research findings which are usually fast-tracked for immediate publication because they are considered urgent. In the letters, there is an abstract, then there is introduction, the main body, conclusion and certain references. Supplemental articles. Supplemental articles contain a large volume of tabular data that is the result of current research and maybe dozens or hundreds of pages with mostly numerical data. Some of the journals, they don't publish these. They only publish these articles electronically and they are available on the internet only. Miniature articles. The concise article format is miniature articles. They are limited to 4 journal pages, including the references and the figures. And they permit the editorial board to process papers rapidly and enable the reader to learn about the new results and developments efficiently. Just a couple of pages only. Review articles. Review articles do not cover original research, but rather they accumulate the results of many different articles on a particular topic into a coherent narrative about the state of the art in that field. A systematic review is a type of literature review that collects and critically analyzes multiple research studies or papers. Well, if we look into the context of North American dental world, so examples for these type of reviews where they are being published, like the Journal of Canadian Dental Association and Journal of American Dental Association, you can find these type of articles over there, and of course in other journals as well. Review articles, they include abstract, introduction, main body, and the reference. Then comes the research notes. Research notes are short descriptions of current research findings which are considered less urgent or less important as compared to the letters, the communications which we have already discussed. Research papers. These are the articles which are usually between 5 and 20 pages and are a complete description of the current original research finding, but there are considerable variations between scientific fields and the journals. This is an example of the research poster, as I told you, during some conferences and during some scientific meetings. A specific space is provided and the organizers, they tell you about the size of the poster, that it should not exceed that. So in that prescribed area, you have to present your whole research poster. Posters are typically shown during the conferences, as I told you, either as a complement to a talk or a scientific paper, or they could be just as a publication. They can be a good introduction to a new piece of research before the paper is being published. Poster presentations are often not peer-reviewed but can instead be submitted, meaning that as many as can fit, they will be accepted. Well, the question arises, when to start writing? The hardest part is getting started. Well, don't wait until the conditions are perfect to begin. Beginning makes the conditions perfect. You think that some topic, some subject, it is important, you are feeling attracted to it, you feel you have a potential to write about it, so start writing. General structure of the article: there would be a title, then there would be an abstract, the introduction, methods, results, discussion, acknowledgements, and the references. Write in which order? That is important. Like, of course, these are the contents, like these are the sections, but how to start? Firstly, you have started some kind of research, or you are doing some study or whatever. So what are the methods? What is your methodology? And what are the results you are getting from those research methodologies, from that research? What are your inferences, etc., etc. Then, looking into that, write the introduction of your article and then come to the discussion part and start writing the discussion part. Once you are done with that, then there would be an abstract. Abstract, I'm going to explain, that is the most critical thing. Reading the abstract, the reader, the editor, and the reviewer, they will decide whether they should go ahead and read the whole article or not. It is very, very important. Then comes the title. And definitely references are very important when you are writing the introduction and discussion, and kindly read those references which you are providing in your article. Methods, subjects, and the materials. The method section usually includes 4 subsections. Number 1, sampling strategy provides a description of the sampling strategy, the sample size, and the methods for assigning samples to conditions. Then the measurement strategies and measurement instruments, how the variables are measured, determines exactly what is being studied. Although the variables studied are discussed in the abstract, the introduction, and the conclusion, the actual definitions of the variables are stated in the measurement strategy. Then the experimental design. It describes operationally the study design, like which type of a study you have conducted, whether it is a cohort study, it is a retrospective study, in a step-by-step sequence. The description should be sufficiently detailed so that the reader is able to replicate the study. And then the statistical analytical procedures. The proposed strategy for quantifying, evaluating, and analyzing the results is presented along with the actual statistical procedures proposed. In the discussion section, the experimenter describes how the appropriate sample size was determined, what is the level of power chosen, and what is how it's going to affect the size criteria, etc., etc. The proposed statistical analytical procedures are specified, and the chosen statistical significance level is stated. Well, this section, it demonstrates the reliability of the results. Best to begin writing this section when you are conducting the experiments or the study. It should be detailed enough so results can be repeated if someone else wants to repeat those. If you are including living beings like animals and humans, then use approval information, ethical considerations should be discussed, and ethical approval from the human and or animal ethical committees should be clearly stated in your methods. Experiments involving human subjects should be subjected to approval by ethical committee before the experiments can start. Manuscripts to a journal will only be published if such research has been conducted in full accordance with ethical principles of the World Medical Association and the Helsinki Declaration. Make adequate reference to accepted methods and identify the differences. If any of your methods is fully described in a previous publication, then you have to cite it over here as well. Mathematical equations and statistical tests are considered as the mathematical methods. Well, the word material is the heading, may be replaced by subjects when you are dealing with the human beings. The aim of this section is to make the reader understand what was done and how it was done, so the reader can determine whether the study can adequately answer the question or not. Editors reserve the right to reject the articles if there are doubts as to whether appropriate procedures have been used. Editors are very smart. They know whether you are lying or you are just making up, or whether the procedures they have been properly adopted. Clinical trials should be reported using the consort guidelines which are available at this website, consort statement, prior to the starting your study. All manuscripts to scientific journals reporting results from a clinical trial must indicate that the trial was fully registered at a readily accessible website, that is clinicaltrials.gov. Do not mention unnecessary details in this section. Explain why each procedure was done. Now, subsections of this methods and materials. Participants, apparatus or materials you used, what were the procedures? For the participants, should be adequately described and should be representative. The importance of that, it will help in assessing the results, generalizing the findings, making comparisons in replications, and of course for the literature reviews. Secondary data analysis. Secondary data analysis refers to the analysis of existing data collected by others. Secondary analysis affords researchers the opportunity to investigate research questions using large-scale data sets that are often inclusive of underrepresented groups while saving time and the resources. Participants, we are discussing major demographic characteristics should be reported where you are conducting the research. Well, the gender and the age group of the participants, their racial and ethnic designation if it is important, their national origin if it is required, their level of education if that is going to affect the results, their health status, the languages you have used, like say for instance you are conducting the research in some French speaking area or in some Spanish speaking area, so which languages you, while interviewing the participants, which language you have used. Apparatus. The function of the apparatus or materials used in the experiment should be also written in your article. The equipment obtained from the commercial supplier, if you have done that, the model number of the equipment should be mentioned, and the name and location of the supplier should also be mentioned. Well, if there is a complex equipment or it is a custom-made equipment, then better to include its drawing or photograph or both along with your manuscript. In the procedure, summarize instructions to the participants. If you have made the groups, so what type of groups you have made, on what basis, specific experimental manipulations if you have done, so what kind of manipulations were those. Describe the control features in the design. If you have some control group as well, so you have to mention like on what basis that was a control group. Then comes the results. Briefly repeating protocols can be effective. Present the results of the experiment but not interpret their meaning. Do not over discuss the results. It is not necessary to describe every step of your statistical analysis. For example, just say something like the odds ratio for severe caries based upon whether the child drank the milk was 0.44, 95% of the confidence interval, that is equal to 0.23 to 0.84. Like a statement like this will be good. Not the whole statistical analysis should be there. The aim when writing this section is to organize and present the data to lead the reader to the conclusions of the study. The results should be presented without any evaluation of or reference to earlier literature. Both supportive and conflicting data must be presented. Present main findings referring to tables and figures. Tables are better than the graphs. Well, how we can say that it is correct or incorrect? So the example is the results for determination of root resorption as a function of extraoral time is presented in table 1. This is the incorrect way of representing some table. The better way to write about that in your article is you have a table and root resorption increased when extraoral time was extended. Table 1. This is the reference that you can find it over there. Well, the tables and figures, they should be straightforward and concise. Do not include the same data in both a table and a figure if you are providing both. It is not necessary that if there is a table there, then you are also providing a figure and both have the same data. No, just one thing would be adequate. Well, present the data in a table unless there is visual information that can be gained by using a figure. A figure is useful for reporting a regression analysis, that is the line graph, comparing the several treatment levels like using the bar graph with the error bars. Avoid using figures that show too many variables or trends at once. That it is going to be quite confusing for the reader. A table's legend should appear above it, and the figure's legend should appear below it. Describe how the data were manipulated in a legend, not in the text. Each figure or table included in the paper should be referred. If you are including something, it should be referred in your text. Like this is an example. The good features of table are the legend explains key details. It should be clear. It explains the meaning of unusual abbreviations like over here. This table is present DMFH, DMFT and SIC. So what are these? Average number of the permanent decay D, missing teeth M, filled teeth F, intact H teeth, DMFT, and mean significant caries in index SIC. So from some study being conducted in 2005. Looking at the table, we will understand everything. Tables and the figures we are discussing. Now over here we have a graph. Mean DMFT index, D is the decayed, missing is E, missing is M, then extracted, then EI extraction indicated, and F filled teeth. So DMFT index, DE, EI, both would be considered as missing over here, then F filled teeth and DMFT. So this is how the graph is going to be represented. Introduction of your article. Well, it will highlight the importance and the necessity of some study which you are conducting and you are representing through your article. Write this section in the past or present tense, but never in the future. That it should not be we will do that, we have done that, or we are doing that. Avoid expressions like this study will examine. No, as I told you, never in the future. This section should contain current state of knowledge or understanding at the beginning of the investigation, giving the background. Then a statement of the purpose, hypothesis, and predictions. Introduce the reader to your research, not summarize and evaluate all the past literature on the subject. Save other studies you may be tempted to discuss for the discussion session, where they become a powerful tool for comparing and interpreting your results. Statement of purpose. It expresses the central question you are asking and thus presents the variable you are investigating. For example, this study investigates the relationship between, like giving you just an example, that this study investigates the relationship between water fluoride level and a decline in the dental caries. The purpose of this study is to determine the effect of toothbrushing, another example, the purpose of this study is to determine the effect of toothbrushing after midday meals and improvement in the oral hygiene condition of the institutionalized elderly population. That elderly population who are living in long-term care, institutionalized. Hypothesis. The explanation you are proposing for certain observation. It should be accompanied by a prediction of results. For example, the daily removal of a supragingival dental plaque is a major factor in the prevention of caries, gingivitis, and periodontitis. That is your hypothesis. Introduction. It must be presented in a structured format covering the following subjects, although not under the subheadings. Well, the statements of the issue in the question should be properly addressed and the essence of existing knowledge and understanding pertinent to the issue. It is the obligation of the researcher to make the reader aware of the relevant past research and findings, to define the key issues, variables, and questions involved, and to create a context and rationale for the current study. The theory being tested is stated and the rival hypotheses are also reviewed. The final paragraph of the introduction should clearly state the aims and or objective of the work being reported, like the aim of this paper is to, or where appropriate, a hypothesis. For example, both the null as well as the true hypothesis should then be stated after that. Whatever is appropriate, whether the null or the true hypothesis. The aim of this paper is to determine that doing the midday toothbrushing is not going to improve the oral hygiene. Null hypothesis. Or the aim of this paper is to determine if the midday toothbrushing is going to improve the oral hygiene. The true hypothesis. So whatever it is appropriate. Some editors, we are discussing introductions, some editors think that the principal results and conclusions should be summarized in the introduction. Most scientists, they disagree, arguing that such a summary appears in the abstract and should not be repeated in the introduction. So don't repeat abstract in the introduction section and don't repeat introduction in the discussion session. Rules for citation in text. Use authors' last names, like XYZ 1983 found that 0.7 ppm fluoride level is adequate for decreasing the caries prevalence. Just giving you an example. If there are more than two authors, then the last names of the first author is given followed by the abbreviation et al. Like this over here. Frequent consumption of refined sugar is more important. Again, this is just an example. That's why I don't put any names over here, just to give you an idea. Frequent consumption of refined sugar is more important than the total amount of sugar consumed during 24 hours in a day. ABC 1947, then XYZ et al. 1955. ABC and XYZ 1963. So what is going to happen in this case, as I told you, always order the publications in chronological order so that the research or the study conducted earlier, it should be cited earlier first and then subsequently what were these studies till the latest one. Discussion. This section should start with a few sentences explaining the main finding of the results and how this supported or rejected the hypothesis that was the reason for doing the study. Methodology should be discussed, such as strengths and weaknesses of the study, address the possibilities of error. The results are discussed and related to what other studies have shown in the literature, especially differences call for explanations, but also discuss in accordance with similar studies, consider also other explanations. In the discussion session, analyze the data and relate them to other studies. The discussion should contain at least the relationship between the results and the original hypothesis. An integration of your results with those of previous studies, possible explanations for some unexpected results, and observations if there are any. Trends that are not statistically significant can still be discussed. Avoid redundancy between the results and the discussion session. End the discussion with a summary of the principal points you want the reader to remember. Do not end with the title that this problem needs more study. What you wish you had done. Now, this flowchart, introduction and discussion. Introduction, introduce the topic, relate to current knowledge, indicate the gap, introduce your work, state research questions and the objectives in the discussion. Answer research questions, support and defend answers with results, explain conflicting results you got, unexpected findings, discrepancies with other research, state the limitations of your study, state importance of findings, establish some newness, and announce further research if you are going to proceed further. Then the references. They should be relevant and recent. Be highly selective. Read the references. Don't just quote those. Do not misquote. Use correct style for the journal while you are giving the references. Well, nowadays we are living in the era where web references are also present, so the full URL should be given and the date when the reference was last accessed. Any further information, if known, the digital object identifier, author names, dates, reference to a source publication, etc. should also be given. Web references can be listed separately, for example, after the reference list under a different heading if desired, or they can be included in the main reference list. It doesn't make a difference until unless specified by some journal. Now comes the abstract. This is the most important part of the manuscript. Besides the title, readers frequently read the abstract. This is the reference. The two people, they have emphasized on this thing. A brief and meaningful abstract serves as a resume for the manuscript. Should not exceed 250 words and should be presented under the subheadings, the objectives, methods, results, then conclusions for reviews, objectives, data sources, study selection, and conclusions. A 50-word clinical significance statement should appear at the end of the abstract, advising readers of the clinical importance and relevance of their work. These subheadings should appear in the text of the abstract. No reference should be cited in the abstract section of the manuscript. Well, as I told you, the abstract is the most important, so it is the first part of the scientific paper that a potential editor and reviewer, they appraise during the submission of the manuscript, and readers appreciate when they search through the electronic databases. Very important, no reference should be cited in the abstract section of the manuscript. I have already mentioned about that. The abstract summarizes the main information from all these sections of the manuscript, summarizing the background, methods, results and the conclusions. In this section, the author provides the answers to these fundamental questions like why have we started? What did we do? What were our methodologies? What were our procedures? And what did our findings, our results? And those findings, those results, what are our inferences on those? These form the basis of introduction, methods, results, and conclusions. Well, as I told you that abstract, it is the critical part of the paper. It states main objective, summarizes the most important results, and you should avoid acronyms and mathematical symbols in the abstract. Well, for the abstract, write and rewrite until it is flawless. Abstract. Many readers quickly browse through the abstracts rather than read the full articles, so you must catch their attention. For this reason, you should express your findings clearly and in a structured way. Avoid unnecessary details and always end with a conclusion. Describe what was done in the study, how it was done, and what are the results or what is the result. Most online indexing services like Medline, PubMed, and Journal Citation Reports, Science Edition, Thomson ISI display only 250 words of an abstract. It is advisable to keep your abstract within that limit. The abstract should be structured according to these guidelines: background indicating why the study is important, the aim, material, subjects, and methods. Keep it short. Results, the most important findings, and finally the conclusion, just the summary what we have studied about this abstract. Now the title. It determines whether paper gets read or not. Uses keywords that researchers in a particular field will recognize. While writing the title, avoid long titles and also follow the rules of the journal where you are intending to get it published. Do not use any abbreviations. The title page is written on a separate page and submitted as a separate file when you are submitting the article online. The reason is the people who will be citing your article, would be reviewing your article, they should not read the name and all the positions of the authors. They will be only provided the main article. The reason for this is to ensure that the manuscript can be reviewed without names of the authors, as I told you, being known to the reviewer, because then the bias will come. Names of authors and their institutional affiliations should be indicated on the title page. Follow the author guidelines when creating the title page. A running title which appears at the top of all pages of your published article should be chosen. It has to be limited to maximum 60 characters. Include institutional affiliation, address, email also in the title page. The title of the scientific paper is essentially an important component of a scientific article. This is the first part of the article that an editor, a reviewer, and a reader reads to understand the contents of a scientific paper. Title must be easy to understand and to catalog, as well as should have a good taste so as to fascinate the readers. Title must be simple, easy to understand, should not be so technical that only the authorities will understand. The title should be short, unambiguous, without abbreviations, and contain an adequate description of the entire work without any biased picture. Now the authorship. Only those persons who have made a significant contribution to the manuscript submitted should be listed as authors. Not like that, okay, I'm writing an article and who wants to get the credit, please contact me and pay me some money. That is not the right method. Limitation of the number of authors. Well, over here I have taken this picture. I love this picture. It was published in Saudi Journal of Biological Sciences in November 2018 by Sultan Ayub Mio, Mio's fishbone model, basic components of a scientific paper. Very nicely done work. And like the title, the results, abstract, discussion, introduction, conclusions, methods, acknowledgements. So they have given all that which we have discussed earlier. So I like this picture, and it is going to give you a very nice idea about the contents which should be there in the scientific papers. So I have taken it from there and put it in my article. Now the keywords of your article. Submit few keywords. Number of the keywords depends upon the journal's requirements. These keywords will be used for indexing purposes. Use proper English or internationally acceptable terms in the field. Only abbreviations firmly established in the field may be eligible. Authors must disclose any financial and personal relationships with other people or organizations that could inappropriately influence or bias their work. This comes under the declaration of competing interest. Very important. Examples of potential conflicts of interest include employment, consultancies, stock ownership, honoraria, paid expert testimony, patent applications or registrations, and grants or other funding. Peer-reviewed articles. Peer review is an academic term for quality control. Each article published in a peer-reviewed journal is closely examined by a panel of reviewers who are experts on the article's topic, that is, the author's professional peers, hence the term peer review is there. The reviewers look for proper use of research methods, significance, and paper's contribution to the existing literature, and integration of previous authors' work on the topic in any discussion, including the citations. Papers published in these journals where peer review is conducted are expert approved. Now the process of research. Well, after completion of research, you will during that, you will be preparing the manuscript. Then you are going to submit the manuscript when you have concluded your research and you have all the results and your data is complete and it is refined and you have done all the tests and everything. You know that now it is ready for the submission. Well, it is going to be reviewed. The decision is going to be taken on it. It could be rejection or it could be approval. Well, if it is rejection, go back to your data, and if they say that you have to review it, so and again the whole process is going to be done. Well, if they will ask you for revision, then after revision, resubmit it. It is going to be re-reviewed. It could be rejected. Again, you have to go back. Or it is going to be accepted and is going to be published. Before writing an article, before submitting an article, keep in mind, ask a question to yourself. If your paper is definitely something worth reading, it worth other people's time or not? Well, how to select the journals where you are going to get your work published. Choosing the right journal. What are the aims and scope? What are the type of articles they are publishing? What are the current hot topics according to that journal? And what is the readership of that journal? Well, there are two things we need to keep in mind while selecting the journal: the impact factor and the immediacy index. These are the two very important things. Different types of journals are there, like the generalized, specialized, low impact and high impact journals. So question arises, where to get published? Impact factors. Check out the impact and relevance. Scope of the journal, whether your article is related to that journal scope or not, what are the audience, what are the readers, how much time will they take for reviewing your article and publishing your article. Submission of your article. Some journals request the authors to submit their original manuscript and figures via the online submission. Using this online system, it is easy for the authors to submit manuscripts and track their progress through the system to publication. Reviewers can easily download manuscripts and submit their opinions to the editor. Editors can manage the whole submission, review, revise, publish process, etc., etc. Now, as I told you about the impact factors, it measures what are the impact factors? Measure of the frequency of which the average article in a journal has been cited in a particular year. So how we get that? Cites to recent articles divided by the number of recent articles. That is the impact factor. All citations in a journal in a particular year during the last 2 years divided by all citable articles in the journal during the last 2 years, you will get the impact factor of that particular journal. And the immediacy index, is the average number of times an article is cited in the year it is published. The journal's immediacy index indicates how quickly articles in a journal are cited. Well, if your article is rejected, it is not the end of the world. Take a deep breath, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. So thanks a lot for listening to this lecture, and hopefully it's going to help you in preparing your board exams, as well as if you are intending to write an article or a scientific paper for some dental journals. So it's going to help you in writing your